Hello, welcome back to Conversations at thewholenote.com. I'm David Perlman. I'm here with Svetlana Dvoretskaia.
Perfect.
And looking at this and thinking back on not so many years ago when we had just moved into this building, and I think you had just started, and Anne Cooper Gay at Canadian Children's Opera Company said to me, "There's this interesting person." So time proves it, I think.
Thank you.
Looking at this and just marveling at the lineup this year so far already with Gergiev, Marinsky, Kern, Spivakov, and still to come, which is the reason we decided to do this now, although we could have done it before. Coming to Roy Thomson Hall, Moscow Soloists 20th anniversary tour with Bashmet, who you've brought before.
Yeah.
And Misha Maisky, who nobody has brought.
Been here for many years.
For how long?
Almost over 35. It's a crazy number.
So he's completely outside of my own image repertoire because I've only been here since 1975. So let's start with him.
Sure, with Maisky.
Yeah.
Let's start with him.
Well, partly with Maisky, but also with, if I think back, what was the first event you did that I remember was, I think, a joint event with the Canadian Children's Opera Company and with the stars of the...
No, it's actually, you know what? It was my very first concert was Vladimir Spivakov and Moscow Virtuosi. And why you're thinking of Anne Cooper Gay and Canadian Children's Opera Company, because they did one piece, Requiem, where we invited Anne Cooper Gay. And I just want to also sort of, I'm saying it all the time in all my interviews, it's on my website too, that your publication was the very first one to recognize my work, and I was a baby back then in 2004. My business was I just opened it up. It was my first concert, and you came to that concert and you actually wrote. You, of course, may not remember that, but I do because it's engraved in my memory. You said, we found someone, and actually Live End Void is filled right now.
Right. Because you started at the Weston.
I started at George Weston.
In that great big empty hole that had been left.
Exactly. Yeah. And that actually meant so much to me because I believe you're the only press there, and you're the only press who actually covered that, and that gave me a lot of energy afterwards, a lot of energy. So I really wanted to thank you, and I mean, because of course, because I'm here, but I also, like, I say it everywhere, and I use that quote because it's, like I said, it meant a lot to me. But it was Moscow Virtuosi with Vladimir Spivakov was like my sort of the first saying, hello, I'm here in Toronto. And then...
So how is it that you could arrive in Toronto and say, hello, I'm here? I mean, where was here from? I mean, what was it that gave you the chutzpah to say, yeah, I'm going to do this here?
You know what? It was fortunate or unfortunate because that concert was a big success. And... someone we all know very well, Bill Littler, the famous critic from Toronto Star, he always say that if I ever need, he knows a lot of good doctors, you know, who can take care of me. So that's why I'm not sure it was fortunate and unfortunate. But I was, frankly, I came to the country, I came in '98. I came from St. Petersburg. I came here with realization, okay, it's Canada, it's not America, but I was absolutely ready to materialize my American dream, which is in my point of view does not lie into, you know, what do they say, one house, two cars, and a dog, and you know, it was something that I always wanted to do in my life. I'm coming from the musical family. I didn't
from a musical family.
Yeah. My mom, she was a very, very good pianist, and at her young age, she won a lot of international competition, and she was very promising. She studied with Spivakov in the same class.
Oh, okay.
And you know, if life wouldn't, she was a concert pianist for a while, but then, you know, she had me, and she was married, and for sort of the rest of her years, she was teaching at St. Petersburg Conservatory. But she was very, very, really great musician. And my father, he was a doctor, but it was still, you know, there was a lot of artists were coming through our doors, and we've been to a lot of concerts. And culture was always a huge part of our life, huge. Okay. I did not become, I studied piano, of course, like, but you know, I'm saying, of course, like 80% of the Russian children do. I went to the special school, but my mom did everything possible, so I will not be a musician.
Become a doctor for the crazy impresarios.
Exactly. But here I am. I didn't become a doctor. I didn't become a musician, but I always kind of knew what I wanted to do. And back in Russia, they call it administrator. You know, administrator. It's someone who does everything, but this is how they call it, administrator. And this is the university I went to. When I went to university, sort of the Soviet time was over, so they didn't call it administrator department or faculty. They call it management in show business. So they kind of changed the name. And this is what I've graduated. So if I would stay there, I would definitely be doing what I'm doing here, but maybe working for the government, because the private sector was not that, you know, developed at the time.
But I mean, what's astonishing even here is that to be doing what you're doing as an individual is almost as astonishing in this context as trying to do it in a non-governmental context would be there. Because while it's not governmental, it is still very much a culture industry, and you started as an outsider.
It's true, but you know what? To be very honest with you, David, I didn't think about it that way when I arrived. I was looking for a job in the arts. I thought I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna find it right away, and shouldn't be a problem because I have an education. I knew the language when I came here, so I tried. I really, really, truly tried. Couldn't find anything. Nobody even looked at my, you know, my way, and the most I could get is a volunteer and open the door and smile at the reception table, and that was about it. But also, I think I was offered some kind of a job of, you know, like putting the cards in the envelope and sending the mail or something like that for $5 an hour. I couldn't afford it because I came here on my own. I had to pay rent and do all that. So I had to survive, and I went through, I've done a lot of different jobs. I worked in retail many hours a day, which gave me like a great school, you know, that what immigrants go through. It gave me a lot of strength, and I do not regret that for a minute. And then I worked in the corporate world, and I started to make a career there. It was pretty good career that I was making, but something was, you know, itching. Something was bothering me. Something something was wrong, you know, and I'm missing. And I every day I would say to myself, like, this is really what I came here for, you know, like, it's all wonderful country and wonderful people, you know, and it's safe, and it's, you know, another 10 years and I can make this much more money and, you know, do all kinds of, go on longer vacations.
But so what?
So what?
Yeah. So you found a wonderful hall, because it is still a wonderful hall.
I found a wonderful hall.
And you were able to pick up the telephone and...
It was a bit of a different chain of events, frankly. It was what I call miracle, but but miracle only come when we're ready for that. And I think at that point of my life, I was 5 years here by then, and I was absolutely ready. I knew that Vladimir Spivakov is coming to Toronto. And I knew that he studied in the same class with my mom. And I made a very, very, I really tried to be able to meet him. And he was actually coming here to perform, but he was coming to perform for the Russian impresario. And it was in pretty, it was in the musical hall, and I don't even know how all of that happened.
Right.
But however, I had 3.5 seconds in elevator, going from first floor to the third floor.
What they call the elevator pitch.
And I did it.
You did it.
And I did it.
Yes.
And I met him, and I said, I told him who I am.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult for me. I mean, I didn't know how he's going to react, if he's going to remember my mom, if he's going to remember anything,
Yeah.
such a star. And he reacted right away. And we actually had a very long conversation. And I told him, after the concert, we sat down, and I told him what I want to do, and I would really want to try, and that's it. And next week, I flew to New York. He introduced me to his management at the Columbia Artist Management, and he told me that he's coming next year with a big tour, with a big North American tour, and he actually told his management that he wants a Canadian impresario to be me. There was a huge trust, honestly, on his part.
Yeah.
Huge trust, because I didn't have any kind of record back then.
Yeah. So was the foundation already part of his picture at that time?
No, we started the foundation later.
Later,
We started it later.
Okay.
No, it was just the concert.
Just the concert.
At that time, and he said, and you know what? And I remember, I met with his manager at the time, and she said, Vladimir, are you sure? Like, we don't have a record of this company. We don't have a record of this person. And he says, yes, I'm absolutely sure. So it was a lot of trust on his part. And yeah, I did that concert.
So then you got good at doing the Western, which is what, 1100?
Yeah, 1100.
And you translated that to Kerner very easily, the same number. When
Actually,
did you?
I translated it to Roy Thomson Hall.
Well, that's what I wanted
first.
to. That's what I wanted to ask about. Is
Yeah.
when you're sitting there saying, "Well, I'm not crazy enough yet, so I've done 1100. Let's do 26."
Yeah.
So who did you bring in for that?
My first concert at Roy Thomson Hall was Dmitry Khvorostovsky.
Alone.
No.
Or with Sandra? No,
Sandra was another time.
Another time.
He came with the orchestra, with the symphony, and the choir from Siberia. And it was an interesting combination, actually. The orchestra was half Russian, half French. And there was a female choir from Siberia. And they did this program with the Russian Orthodox songs and Russian arias, the second half, and the songs from the Second World War. Second World War. So it was a very specific program, and I guess no one wanted to touch it. So they found a crazy one.
And it worked.
And it worked.
Wow.
Yeah, and it worked.
And then I remember you brought him with Sandra Radvanovsky when no one else had really, here I think she had done one gala in the very first Luminata, and she sang like this angel, and then you brought her, and then the COC brought her after that.
After that.
So I said we were going to talk about this one coming up, because obviously it's coming up
absolutely.
May
3rd. It's May 3rd.
3rd.
It's Thursday, May 3rd. For Thomson Hall again.
And it's Bashmet with Moscow Soloists?
Moscow Soloists. So this is also kind of a very celebratory concert, because it's 20th anniversary of his chamber orchestra, Moscow Soloists. So they've been around for 20 years. They They're a Grammy Award-winning orchestra. It's a 60th anniversary for Maestro Bashmet.
Yeah.
And it's 35 years since Maisky been in
North America.
And he's been
Canada.
to United States, but in Canada. Yeah, in Canada. And I don't really know why that happens, because he's such a famous superstar, right? But he doesn't have, from what I understand, he doesn't have a lot of love for North America. He's very busy in Europe. He plays a lot in Europe and Israel and Asia. A lot of Asia, actually, after his recording with Lang Lang and Repin. He's and of course he's very busy with Marta Argerich all the time. But because him and Bashmet also play a lot at Verbier, you know, and all kinds of European festivals, it's kind of worked out.
So is this a particular program that they are traveling together with? Or?
Yes, it's a particular program, but the concert actually consists of two soloists, because Bashmet is going to play.
Of course.
He's going to play, and Maisky is going to play. And when Maisky plays, Bashmet conducts. But so we have two soloists in one concert, which is magnificent.
Yeah, fantastic.
Which is really, really magnificent. And Maisky is going to play Haydn Cello Concerto, and there's some, of course, you know, Russians love surprises and they love encores, so I'm not gonna, I can't give it away, of course, but yeah. And there's Brahms Sonata for viola and chamber orchestra, which Maestro Bashmet is gonna play. So it's gonna be quite interesting, and I think very energetic night, because I think the combination of those two musicians are going to be something extraordinary. Yeah.
So, as if all this is not enough to wake you up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I notice in the last little while you're starting to take on some interesting, smaller, alternative projects. What's that about?
Well, because, you know, there's a lot of very interesting and very artistic projects, but they, you know, that just by nature of it, they can't fill up the Roy Thomson Hall. So we go into the smaller theater, and there are some very interesting ones that are coming up next season too. And I think I wanted to, probably, maybe using the opportunity, I wanted to say about some other things that I do in the performing arts, and the mainstream audience doesn't really know about it. So my goal for the next year is to somehow make it available to the mainstream community.
So music theater?
Drama theater.
Drama theater.
Drama theater. We bring here a very, very exquisite, very high-profile theatrical projects. And those projects, they tour Europe, they go to the major European festivals, and they go to places like Lincoln festivals, or they play at BAM, you know, the Brooklyn Academy of Music. Right. But yeah, and we're very lucky because we can bring them here, but so far we only made it accessible to the Russian community. So starting next season, we're gonna do what everyone else does in the United States and Europe. We're gonna put them with a translation, with the surtitles, because those productions are really, really, really worth seeing. And one is actually, which doesn't need the translations, is coming up this June. It's June 13 at the Metrotron Convention Center. It's a very famous story by the Russian writer Nicola Karamzin. It's called Poor Lisa. It's about a tremendous love story between poor slave and aristocrat.
So this is during Luminato, but not
it's not a part of Luminato, which
fringe,
is
the Luminato fringe.
Yeah.
It's great.
It's actually, yeah, it should have, because it's exactly Luminato kind
It
of
sounds
project.
like it.
It's
It
exactly.
sounds like a twin. It's great.
And it's sort of, it's translated, and nowadays it's very famous choreographer produced that, very famous theater produced it. It has no words. It's sort of, it's theater without words. They dance and they act, but there is no words. And we bring 3 40-feet containers from Russia. And it's the whole set is like, it's a modern movie theater. It's a 3D screens. It's beautiful. It's really, really, really interesting. There's a lot of information on our website at show1productions.ca. But this is something, again, Russian audience, they know this piece. You can't get a ticket to see that in Moscow. You just can't. But usually people would pay like about $500 to see that production in Moscow. So here is much more accessible. And so we're gonna try to let the mainstream theatrical audience know about that. But this is, like I said, this is no language involved.
Great.
Next year we're bringing some really famous companies with the translation, with the
way one would
yeah.
use it in opera, where
Yeah.
it's taken for granted.
Exactly.
It's wonderful.
Exactly.
So we're going to talk again, but I think we're running out of time today.
Yeah.
It's lovely finally to sit and do this. It's
Thank
been
you.
a long time, and I'm glad
Thank
we
you
got
very
this
much.
chance. We'll do it again.
Thank you very
And
much.
to you, thank you very much for being with you. We'll see you again too. Bye-bye.